right,
Yeah.
so since this is your movie, I say you go first. How many do you have? I have 3 topics I'd like to discuss.
I thought I had 3, but I mainly have 2.
Okay.
So the first is probably the most obvious. Um, I feel like I tend to lean towards more of the technical side of the movies.
Mhm.
So it's natural that we have to talk about the way Edgar Wright edits his movies and the way he integrates sound in his movies.
I'm very
First of
glad you
all,
picked that. Because I
why
wanted
did you
to, but
not?
I don't know. I don't know enough about his movies to like do that.
Well, here's some homework for you and for people at home.
Okay.
Go watch Hot Fuzz because there's you don't have to watch the whole movie. You could just look up Hot Fuzz fight scene,
I've seen that.
and that is like quintessential Edgar Wright. The way it's cut so perfectly. I mean, and this movie does it pretty well, especially when he's kind of like recapping the plan to
Mm.
Nick Frost's character. He does it like multiple times. Like that is really good, and a little bit with the action sequences, but more so with in Hot Fuzz. That's like fight sequence is like perfect, and I think that's really well with specifically not so much the music, but it integrates well with like the sounds, like and he cuts like directly with it. And
Mhm.
I've kind of like tried to emulate that in some of my videos that I've made, just because I just feel like it immerses the audience in a specific way,
Mhm.
because you could be in a movie and the sound's gonna be there because it's the only thing you're gonna hear besides people eating popcorn or whatever.
Mhm.
But just like that, it's just so satisfying that all everything happens at like the cues all at
Yeah.
once, you know. So I really admire that. And the other movie that just like came to my mind as I was writing this down was Baby Driver.
Mhm.
And
Also Scott
you,
Pilgrim.
yeah, that's who I didn't know it was Edgar Wright, to be honest. But it makes sense now
I think
that
it
you
is.
say that.
Mhm.
The editing is perfect, especially once he jumps out that window
Yeah.
in Scott Pilgrim.
It's also a good way to describe it is satisfying. I would have never
Yeah,
thought to, but yeah, it is because you hear the angering thing that I think I want to blame Edgar Wright for is that you hear really good beats in movies and they're not moving along to them, and I'm like, why the fuck aren't you?
yeah. And an example I can think of that I don't think was Edgar Wright is you're gonna be so upset
Oh, God.
that I'm gonna bring this up, but it's Suicide Squad's trailer. So their trailer
The new one?
for the movie, no, the old one, the like 2017 or whatever.
Mhm.
That trailer, it's kind of I don't know if they did it first. They probably didn't, but it's a Queen song that
Oh, I
it
know what
like
you're
kind
talking
of
about.
syncs with like bullet shells hitting the ground.
Mhm.
That's really nice and satisfying, which I can't think of a better word. It's just like it's just so perfect. It just
Mhm.
makes the most sense, and I wish I was Edgar Wright in the fact that like I perfected it or I used that and that was my thing I was known for. Like it's such a
Ooh,
cool thing.
yeah. Because then, I mean, I'm sure. Well, I don't know. If you do it right, I feel like it'd be fine. But now everybody that does that is derivative of him.
Yeah, it's just he does it so well.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I could see people thinking it's disorienting in the way he moves the camera, but
Hmm.
I mean, it it like zones you in the experience,
Yeah.
at least for me. And Kayla, I started watching this movie like right after we recorded, and then I got tired and fell asleep. I started watching it again today, and she like got hooked. I don't know if it was specifically for this, but like I could
I would
definitely see
say.
that being someone like drawing someone in just because it's so unique.
I would say too. It's kind of hard to not pay attention to that. Like it's like I love movies that basically are like demanding your attention,
Yeah,
but not in an annoying way.
yeah. It's he just does it so perfectly.
Agreed.
So that was my first deep dive.
Okay.
Go watch Hot Fuzz, that fight scene, and the entirety of Baby Driver. Specifically, if you don't want to spend that much time, specifically the first scene, honestly, where he's the getaway driver, and it's like,
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
yeah,
Well, now that you've talked about something technical, I was going to start with something like historical, but I'm going to also go into a technical thing that I loved from this movie.
hmm
And then I never really thought about until doing a little bit of research. So I want to talk about the one takes. I think they only do like one or two. But
hmm
specifically, the day that the zombie invasion starts, when Shaun like walks from his place to the corner shop and
right,
doesn't notice any of the zombies in the streets or the corpses that are walking around. I mean, he just goes about his regular day. That specific scene. So that was actually shot in one long unbroken take. And that is something known as not only just a one take, but something called a oneer. That's, I guess, an industry term for them. And these shots are intended to appear as if they're taken in one uninterrupted take. In a lot of cases, like in this movie, they're actually shot in one take, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes, and you can kind of tell, at least I can kind of tell when you're really noticing, like you can see cuts or like sneaky cuts whenever, like a big one, I forget what they called them. There's like a specific term for them, but basically, like, say you're past the person that we're looking at, that we're following, passes a wall or something, that's probably a cut, like something like that.
right,
Not a wall, but they like pass in between. Like, let's say there's like a pillar somewhere, and they pass in between that. That's typically a place that's easy to cut.
right,
But this one was not. It was actually a one shot. And if done well, and like in this movie, they do it very well. You keep your scene moving in a very seamless and masterful way. Like this one, at least for me, it feels like when you do one really well, you can barely notice it. Like you notice that it's happening, but you're not like, holy shit, like that was one take. Well, and you also may be asking, Anthony, like how does one do a one take well? And if you shut the hell up for a second, then
I,
I'll tell you.
I was legitimately thinking that because there's so much pressure on everyone involved to just get it perfectly right.
Exactly. And I can't really give you the technical stuff. Like I can't give you exactly how to do that. I mean, it's a lot of choreography. It's a lot of not just with the actors, but with the camera person, with the extras. Like it's a lot of
Lighting,
coordinating. Exactly.
right?
Um, but I can tell you the three elements that you need to have in a one take to make it a seamless, masterful scene. Because, like I
Okay,
said, even if you can do it, even if you have the manpower to do it, like the technicality, the choreographer, even if you have all that, doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing it. And so there's three things that you can look at. So first is the setting. So in this case, it's Shaun's home, not his exact home, but his neighborhood. And we see him move really effortlessly through this neighborhood. And that's what a lot of one takes kind of have to have, like a familiarity and effortlessness, so that not only the camera, but the viewer and Shaun, we're all moving throughout this neighborhood like we know it. So
right.
the setting is a good way to do that. And it's a perfectly showcased in just one uninterrupted walk from, like I said, from his home to the corner shop. The second is the character. You have to know who the character is, and you have to establish like who we're following, because if it's not compelling enough, then a one take can be like, well, who am I supposed to be looking at? And the comedy in the scene has to do a lot with how oblivious Shaun is to his surroundings. Like
Oh,
that's the whole point of the scene, right? And with scenes before it with his girlfriend, we're already set up to know exactly how daft and oblivious this guy is. Like that's his whole kind of character arc. And Shaun, so we see this from Shaun, and we already know this. We've already established that he's just not a great boyfriend because he doesn't pay attention to what her needs are, or he like has promises that he can't deliver. He just basically just not overall just not paying attention to what's happening in his relationship. And you can just see this. You see this in the beginning scene, but you can just see this reestablished through this one scene, because he's just going about his day. He's not really noticing any huge changes that are happening around him.
flips
And
on
he
the
just
blood.
exactly, like he sees the little handprints, doesn't do it. Like he just is you kind of know this about him because you're like, oh, this guy's actually stupid. Like he's actually does not know what's happening. Like kind of like if his girlfriend like dyed her hair, he would not know and he wouldn't like say anything about it. And it's such a the huge change in the scenery and how much of this like the same he is. It's just so funny. It's such a funny combination and a really brilliant way. This one take is a really brilliant way to underline this issue, not just in his own life, but in his relationship to Liz that led her to dumping him. So that's like the whole character bit. The last thing is the plot. So obviously, this is the inciting incident to Shaun's discovery of the zombies, and he's not even the first person that knows about it. We are. So it is a perfect way to start the rest of the movie because the rest of the movie is about them escaping these zombies. So that is the way to have a one take. Basically, the questions to ask yourself: should I have a one take in here, or is it just like, do I just want to show that I can like choreograph a car scene that is in one take? Do you need that, or do you just want to show us that you can do that? You know?
Do you need 1917? Is that a movie you need to happen?
I mean, I guess it's a cool. That's the thing is that movie good or is it a gimmick? Like I guess it's good, and I mean,
Maybe
I
it's a
will
little bit of
say
both.
that I did like that the movement is linear and so is the timeline, so that makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, there you go.
And so next, I want to talk about change.
Mm.
So, one thought after like I finished the movie, I had turned off the TV, is if any of that happened, if the zombie apocalypse didn't happen, Shaun would have been stuck in the same spot. Like, because at the end of the movie, he gets back together with Liz. He's seemingly a better person. At least Liz thinks that enough to be with him again. But he never would have changed.
He would have
Nothing
been
would
like
have
a zombie.
exactly. And that's actually perfect because 2 points in the movie, they kind of like give that hint to where he's like yawning and it's like kind of a zombie and he's like walking like a zombie.
Yeah.
It was really funny. But it just makes me think of, because I've had this conversation actually, funny enough, with a friend of mine. People are scared of change, but that's not necessarily a bad thing whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not a entirely new thought that change is necessary. Change is kind of vital to become a better person, to just learn different things about yourself, about people around you. Like he learned so much about the people around him. He learned to love his stepdad even a little bit, even if it was at the end of his life, his stepdad's life. He learned that he really did care for him, and he wanted to be that fatherly figure, but he just really couldn't be that for him.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Just the theme of change within this movie.
Well, I also like that the one thing I can talk or I really love about this movie is that I mean, it feels weird to say this about a movie about zombies, but it feels very realistic.
Yeah.
That it does talk about change and how much he changes, but it still has those elements of showing that he's kind of the same. Like there's not much change that he had to do to keep his girlfriend. Like
yeah, I actually wrote down 2 things that I think. Well, Shaun didn't hate his stepdad at the end, and he kind of became a leader. And Liz was like, "Yeah, that's enough."
Yeah, I mean, especially I think that a good way that you can see that is the gag about him walking like a zombie. Like he does that in the beginning and at the end. And so there's not, like I said, there's not much change. Like he still is waking up what it looks like in the middle of the day, going downstairs and sitting down and watching TV. Like it's not like he's, going on a run or something. What I really like is that they're not saying like, oh, you need to be you need to be a different person for Liz to want you. He just had to he just had to pay attention, and he just had to not make reservation or not take her to a pub for their anniversary. Like there's like things that you can do to change for the better. And that's like the thing about relationships. It's very cheesy, but it's very true that you that the person that you're supposed to be with, that they don't, it's not that they want you to be a different person, but they want you, like, are, because of them you're motivated to be a better person.
Right.
But they
And
should, I mean, I guess that's not the issue, right? Like, that the issue isn't that she didn't want him, is that she just didn't want him to do certain things that weren't hard for him not to do. Like, it's not
yeah,
hard to just remember to make a reservation.
it's also really funny that part of the reason that they broke up was the Winchester, the pub that they
Yeah.
spent so much time, and that's like where shit went down.
Hmm.
There's no way that's a coincidence.
Well, yeah.
That's just like, that's good. Props to you, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. That's good. That's some good stuff right there. Good movie.
I want to talk about this movie seems like obviously a zombie movie, obviously about a relationship, obviously about change, but also an ode to friendship is what I like to call
Oh
it.
yes.
So Shaun and Ed's, a fun fact to start this off is Shaun and Ed's, I think that's his name, right? Ed.
I think so.
Their friendship is based on Simon Pegg, who plays Shaun, and Nick Frost, who plays Ed. Their relationship, because they used to share a flat together, and it does really show in this movie because this friendship feels very deep and loving, yet very understated and easy. And I really love this kind of friendship, and I don't think it's represented a ton in media. Like, I feel like when you have a best friend in a movie, it's like all consuming. Like, it's the only thing, right? Like, Booksmart is the
Right.
one I can think of where they're like, it's very intense. And this one, I guess in the way it kind of is, but not really. Like, it feels very effortless the way that they care about each other.
It feels like a typical best friend relationship.
At least one that I'm used to. I'm sure there are
Yeah.
intense ones, and not to say that those are bad, but like, I'm just not used to those. Um
Right.
yeah, and there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, just like random notes I had. But I really like the shorthand that they seem to have that does translate really easily into knowing somebody. I do wonder though um if that had to do with them being good actors or them already knowing each other. So I don't know how much credit to give to the writing or to the acting, you know. With any other friendship, there's a ton of flaws. So the first thing is the enabling through his comfort, through Ed's comfort. So the way he goes above and beyond to comfort Shaun after their breakup is very sweet. But it does show really well how enabling comfort can be. Because I mean, he just talks shit about her the whole time. Like, he doesn't really dissect any of what Shaun's issue is, which, I mean, sometimes that's what you want to go to certain friends for, right? Like, some friends are
Right.
good for just like venting, some are good for talking shit, some are good for like calling you out on your shit. But in this case, I feel like he could have been a little bit more like, hey, let's dissect what you've done to get here. But he's like, no, fuck her. Um,
Let's
and
drink.
just, yeah, just getting him drunk. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say that's like a terrible way to comfort your friend, but the way they're doing it doesn't feel like a great idea. Um, yeah. Another, I guess, flaw is the platonic jealousy that Ed seems to have, and non-romantic jealousy, which I really liked seeing. Because Ed seems to really hate the girlfriend for like not honestly no reason. And then I realized, oh, it's probably because he's just jealous that she takes up his time from him.
Yeah.
But it's never, well, there's only one case, and I don't know if I talked about it, but there is, I do like that nobody really makes any like, y'all are really close jokes. People just know that they're really good friends, except for that one shitty guy, but he, like, nobody likes him anyways, where he was like, well, like, are you
Oh,
guys
your
gay or
boyfriend.
something? Or yeah, your boyfriend. And they like leaned into it. Like, he was like,
That
yeah,
was funny.
babe. I liked that because they were like, whatever. Yeah. And then we see the friendship starting to fray a little bit when Ed and Shaun's way of dealing with the apocalypse is completely different. And to also bring in what you're talking about, I think that has to do with just the way that they're growing up and the way that, I mean, I can imagine that an apocalypse makes you grow up really fast, and Ed doesn't really seem like he wants to. He seems like still stuck in the like, I mean, he doesn't leave the Winchester, right? Like you said, it's a big symbol, and he doesn't leave it, and he doesn't want to. But
He's on his
Shaun does.
phone a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, he like doesn't care about what's happening, but Shaun is taking it seriously. And so, yeah, I think that's a good way of showing that some friends just like grow out of each other, you know. A lot of Shaun's loved ones just like just like died. But this one was like weirdly sad. I think I missed when he was bit. Was it whenever all of them like came inside? First of all, why did that girl like run outside for that guy?
That was stupid.
I
He
forgot that
treated her
happened.
so like yeah, he was very shitty to her. It was he was gonna make a Molotov, and then
Yeah. And then
he
he
got
got bit.
caught.
He got got.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the friendship is still alive, even though Ed is dead and a zombie.
I mean,
Um,
it's not that different. The only thing is like he's chained up. Like he all he did was play games and
yeah,
drank beer.
but I like that. I feel like it's a very sweet thing.
Yeah.
That he didn't kill him, that he didn't have it in him to kill him, that he kept him around so he can have a buddy. Weird, but
Yeah.
I guess kind of sweet. All right, and so to end this, I want to go. This is like my deepest of dives, and I couldn't help myself, but I want to talk about the history of zombies in movies. So, this is a little history lesson, so just buckle in. So, the first appearance of a zombie in a film is believed to be Victor Halperin's movie White Zombie, which was released in 1932. But then the popularity of these creatures peaked in 1968 with George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which I don't know if you've seen it. I don't think I've seen it.
I don't think so.
Very old movie. This trend seemed to stay throughout the 60s and 70s, but dropped off a little bit in the 80s and 90s. But then zombie films seemed to perform pretty terribly in the box office during this time. And the seemingly dead zombie film genre miraculously came back to life. I wrote that. Um, in the early 2000s, thanks to Japanese zombie video games like Resident Evil.
Still very popular.
Yeah, I didn't know it was early 2000s either. I thought it was like a more of 2010s game, but I don't know. I don't know anything about games. But this inspired a new wave of Western zombie films, including 28 Days Later, a Dawn of the Dead remake, and Shaun of the Dead. And I wanted to pause and ask, do you have a favorite zombie film?
It'd either be this one or Zombieland.
Ooh, I forgot about Zombieland. I think mine might be Zombieland.
Yeah, that one's a classic right there. That's childhood.
Exactly. All right, so now I'm not sure if I'm sure that we've seen all of us have seen a semblance of a monster movie or a creature movie, but something that is sort of unique to these specific creatures is the spectrum that they seem to exist on, because not one zombie is created equally. So let's go over the different kinds that there are. I broke them down into 3 just based off of memory. The first one I like to call the OGs. So these are the typical like classic zombies. They're slow. They don't really talk. I think they just gargle, or gurgle is the term that I used. And they look like they're instantly rotted, which has always bothered me. But I'll get into that a little bit. And these zombies seem to appear in earlier depictions, like in Night of the Living Dead, where they're just creating. I mean, it's new, right? So they're just creating a scary creature, and they don't really need to have any sort of like distinctive features. The next I like to call the realistic bunch. So the zombies in this movie, in Shaun of the Dead, are what I would classify under this category, because they have a ton of the OG characteristics, but their most notable feature to me is that they don't have that signature zombie look. They look like what I would imagine a zombie would look like. Because one thing I never stood about zombies is why they instantly look horrific. But I also think now thinking about it, I think it depends on the way that they're turned into zombies. But for like some movies, it just seems like you look from like a normal person directly into like rotting skin, green, like red eyes, like that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's as realistic. So that's why I'm like,
Right.
I feel like these zombies still look like the shell of what they were. Yeah, and I like that these seem to slowly change. They do have the gurgly sound, which I guess could come with your brain rotting or whatever happens when you become a zombie. I get that. They're also still very slow. And Simon Pegg actually gave an explanation for that when an interviewer asked why they don't like run, like why they are slow moving zombies. And he said, quote, because death is not an energy drink.
That's
Great
funny.
point. Which brings us to the last set of zombies, the CrossFit Class. Because
Oh,
these zombies are on fucking steroids. And if you think about World War Z, these are the
bro.
scariest zombies I could possibly think of. And they don't just like run, they fucking sprint.
It's like
And I don't know if
ants.
you remember that one scene in World War Z where they climb over a fucking wall and they just like throw themselves.
That's why I said they're like ants, because they just like
Oh,
they're just like all for one, one for all.
because that is fucking terrifying. And they're ruthless. If you
Oh
want to
yeah,
know, like I said, watch World War Z.
I Am
Those
Legend,
zombies.
kinda.
Uh okay, that's a good thing that I'm glad you brought that up because
Oh, I
is
watched that.
that
I forgot about that.
ooh, such a good movie. Because Shrek brought you there?
Yeah, yeah.
That it's the classic Shrek I Am Legend pipeline.
Been there,
um,
done that.
but is that a zombie movie?
I don't think so, because in the movie, like Will Smith's trying to get a antidote. I don't think you have an antidote for death, and zombies are dead.
Yeah. Or I mean, as we'll learn a little bit later, sometimes the antidote is love. Okay. Move on. So let's
I
I'm
hate
so
that.
sorry. So let's talk about how to become a zombie. So this can range from a virus like in Train to Busan. Oh, that's my favorite zombie movie. I totally forgot about that
Oh,
movie. It's very good. A chemical leak like in a movie that's not as widely known called The Girl with All the Gifts. That's also another good one. I think that should be on a streaming service somewhere. I don't know where, but it's probably on something. Or radiation, like in Night of the Living Dead. For this movie, they don't really tell us what it was. I think they make a joke that they found out it's not from like an infected animal because in 28 days later, it's from like a rat infested or like I think a rat gave a monkey like some sort of disease and that's how it happened. Like it's not, we don't know what it is for this movie, but it also like when it comes to other movies, it can be whatever, you know.
right.
Yeah. We also do know, and this is typical of a lot of movies where um it can be spread by a bite. I think that's it. I think that's a distinguished or not distinguished. That's an element that's in a lot of
Oh
zombie
yeah.
movies, or at least in every one of them. Um and the transformation into a zombie also differs. So in this movie, it seems to happen pretty fast, like in a couple of minutes. Although the timing mostly adheres to the comedic timing. It seems like I don't think I didn't time it, but I think the stepdad it takes a little bit longer than the mom. But in a
Yeah.
movie like World War Z, it's very fast, and I do think I didn't fact check this, but I do think that Brad Pitt even times it. Like
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure he does.
it's at the very beginning. Oh, and because it's a toy, there's a toy that his daughter has, and it has a specific timer. And I think we see the transformation into a zombie, and it's like in a matter of like seconds.
Yeah.
Um, but in the classic Night of the Living Dead, it can take hours. So
You got
it
time to
also
say
depends.
goodbye.
Exactly. And how to kill a zombie. We learn in this movie that they can be destroyed by removing the head or destroying the brain. And this is typical in most zombie movies. I think this is kind of another, like across the board, that's how you kill them. But in addition, in the Night of the Living Dead, which was like one of the OG ones, they can also be repelled or stopped by fire. I think in, well, I'm sure in World War Z they don't give a fuck because I don't know what's going on with them. Um, but yeah, I also should have looked up another thing, but it seems like they also are like a lot of their attention is brought by sound. That's
Sound or
another,
light. Yeah.
yeah. So that's what I was wondering, like if the fire thing has anything to do with that, but I don't know. All right, and so the last thing is living with zombies. So zombies, for the most part, are just brainless creatures that inhabit the shell of a human body. Sorry, turning into a zombie. I only have 5 minutes. But in some movies, they are portrayed as more sentient beings. So, like in The Girl with All the Gifts, the movie centers on human zombie hybrid children that are basically normal until they get hungry. And then there's movies like Warm Bodies, which I don't know if you remember
Why?
that one.
Why would you mention this movie?
It's such a good one. So in this movie, they don't only have thoughts and feelings, but they can be loved into being human again. So that I think I would say that's the lesson.
From Shaun of the Dead, from just all zombies.
Yeah, just that love is the cure.
Love
No.
cures all.
Yeah, I would say so. It's kind of beautiful if you think about it. Okay, sorry, last thing.
Moving on.
And so this movie is different in that they cannot be fully returned to human life, but they're used for labor, which I think is the most realistic version of what would happen, especially in America. So,
oh, for sure.
they're like, oh, we can exploit their labor? Fucking put them on cart duty at the market.
Put them to work. Especially they don't only need is flesh. They don't get tired. We don't have to pay them. Once our living employees die, they'll come back. It's a win-win.
Wow. I didn't think about that. Yeah. There you go.
Employee for life.
That's not depressing.
Employee for life, afterlife. There you go.
Oh, man. Okay. So I guess my
Capitalism.
question after all this is how realistic are zombies? And if you think they could happen, what movie do you think mirrors what actually would happen?
I feel like Shaun of the Dead would be pretty realistic. I think as far as what might happen, very likely.
I think I Am Legend is pretty could happen.
Yeah.
As long as I have Shrek and bacon.
Or Zombieland, honestly. Zombieland is not. Zombieland's a good one.
I do have a zombie survival guide. So I do.
Oh, yeah?
I know what to do in the event of. The only thing I obtained from that book is where to go. And you shouldn't. You well, I what I remember is where you shouldn't go. You shouldn't go to a hospital.
Okay.
You shouldn't go to a grocery store.
This
you
seems
shouldn't
very
go.
Obvious.
I think they said you shouldn't go to a school. Like you should go to a place that's high, like above ground. Well, first of all, when it starts, when the invasion starts, you should get to the highest point of your home.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. I that's all I remember is that because I was baffled by not going to I think they said a grocery store.
Yeah, because everyone's gonna go there.
Well, also, but they're also not secure. I think they said I don't remember what they said actually. Maybe
my
they said
HEB could never.
Man, HEB is a fortress. I already know it.
If they can handle angry people for the pandemic, just try to get some shit to wipe their ass with. Then they can handle zombies.
No store does more than my HEB.
But yeah, that's what I think.
I don't think it'd be as fun as this movie, though.
No, that's one thing. I was like, I don't know if this was my third one, but this movie is so funny.
It is very, very funny.
Just go watch it if you haven't. If you made it this far, go watch the damn thing.
Yeah, I shouldn't have ended on such a sad zombies are coming.
Get ready.